What was the reason, or what was the event that caused you to become the Crackpot?
Well, what it really was is that I was relatively a normal person, or so I thought when I was a child. I had a couple of minor incidents, nothing of any substance. Uh, and then I grew up very analytical. I was good in math, but ended up bombing out of physics and ending up with a degree in English. And after that, I decided to go into law enforcement. The reason I can talk about things now is that at the time, it would be a little odd for a police officer and then a peace officer to talk about some of the things I'm going to mention. They would have probably sent you away, but I'm retired now, and I'm going to tell you about why I became the Crackpot. The name is because I had a buddy who's a scientist. He's and said, well, we'll write a book together. We have to come up with a title. I just knew that I was just the opposite of him, so I became the Crackpot. Now, the main thing is that I was in law enforcement for about 25 to 30 years, somewhere in that ballpark. Like I said, the deputy sheriff first, and then a court officer. I had a buddy I used to fish with, we'll call him Butch. He's a really wheeler dealer. The only problem is not due to his own fault, his business crashed and he ended up on my couch. But I thought he'd recover quickly, but it took 7 years. We had another friend who had a piece of land and said, look, it was in the Adirondacks, and that if we could put together a deal, he'd give us points off the deal and I could get my buddy off my couch and have my apartment back to myself. So I had a weekend off. We went up to the Adirondacks. Now, the Adirondacks, you have thousands and thousands of acres of woodland. And the chunk that this man had was off of a state park. We went to this state park. There was a railroad tracks that went out from it. And his land was to the left of the railroad tracks to where about 1.5 miles from a golf course. So my buddy Butch said for me to get the car, drive around, and pick him up at the golf course. So I drove around and I picked him up about 1.5 hours later, and to talk to me about, which was kind of odd because he's kind of a talkative kind of guy. He'll talk his ear off most of the time. We're driving back. We don't have too much to say. And then I said, I saw some deer. And then he kind of said to me, I saw tracks in the sand dune. And I'm listening because I go, did you say sand dune? And he said, yeah. And like I said, we're in a place that's just abundance of woods. There isn't sand dunes. And I said, Butch, what did you see? And he says, I don't know. And then I saw the sand dune and with the circular impression. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? And he goes, I don't know. Now, what really bothered me was that he led a recon unit in Nam. He never lost anybody. He was a trained observer. So for him to say, I don't know what I saw, just sort of left me feel a little sketchy about this. And I said, look, I got next Monday off. We're going to come back up because it was about a 4-hour drive up and a 4-hour drive back from where we lived. And I want to see, what's there. And I go, it sounds like you might have seen a UFO or something unusual. Okay. Now, the afternoon before we were supposed to go, we haven't talked about this in about 3 or 4 hours. Butch is over in the corner tying some flies, I think, and I'm just sitting down in a chair trying to figure everything out. It's about 95 degrees. I lived above a garage at the time, and the air conditioning broke, and it was a good 95 degrees. Now, I haven't talked to Butch for a good 4 hours on the subject. Now I'm thinking to myself, should I bring my gun? I was a law enforcement officer, and I'm thinking, but, it's really not going to make any difference if he saw a UFO or something like that. And the moment I'm thinking this, all of a sudden, the room turns ice cold. I mean, it's like you went into a walk-in freezer. And then Butch says to me, they don't want you to take your gun. And then it turned back to warm. It was just wonderful. It was one of those oh shit moments. I said, Butch, you know what you said? He said, yeah. I said, they said they don't want me to take my gun. He said, yeah. And then the important thing is I said, did you feel the cold? He said, yeah. So we did go up there the next day. I left word with my parents if I came back disorientated or anything. I had a buddy with a voice stress machine who was a good investigator, and to tell him some of the details. I went up there. I didn't take my gun. We found this circular area about the size of a football field. Didn't find much information about it. I'll talk about it later. But that was the starting point. You know, when you think about something, it somewhat answers you, even though you haven't asked them the question, and there's a change in the atmosphere, and he's never read your mind before. It definitely piques your curiosity and maybe scares you a little bit. And that was kind of the beginning, because after that, for about the last 40 years or more, every 3 to 4 months, strange things happen to me.
We look forward to hearing these in the future.
Well, I hope so. Bye.